You're listening to a Brain Stew Fresh Fright review.
What's up, creeps? Welcome to another epic film guys Fresh Fright review. I'm Justin.
I'm Jeremy.
I'm BluBrry.
And this week on the show, we're talking about a brand new indie slasher that's taken the horror culture by storm right now. Everyone's talking about it. We're going to be talking about it, but we couldn't do this alone, so we had to have our good friend from the Spookhouse podcast back on the show once again. Last you heard him, he did our H2O Halloween 20 years later episode with us, which was one of our biggest episodes last year. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Phil back to the show.
Hello.
Woo!
Excited to be back. I take no credit for those amazing numbers on H2O. I mean, people just love that movie.
They love it or they
love
hate
you
it,
too.
You know, even what's interesting about that movie is that people that disliked the movie still enjoyed listening to us gloat about it for the most part, you know, for the majority of it, we'll say.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Lots of fun.
Message me anytime and ask about recording Halloween-related stuff. I'll be there.
Well,
yeah.
You know, the name of your podcast kind of gives it away that would be a given, my friend, but always appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. We know we have some fans of ours that are fans of yours, so it's always a welcome crossover here on Epic Film Guys. But let's getting right to it right now. In a violent nature, we're going to go full on spoilers. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen the movie, beware. I mean, listen, it's a slasher movie. It's a throwback to awesome camp slashers like Friday the 13th. So, I mean, if you want to listen before seeing it, that's your choice. But I would recommend, if you have the opportunity, it's in limited release right now. See this movie in theaters as of right now. It's made $2.1 million at the box office in a limited release. We don't know the budget, but based on watching the fucking movie, I'm pretty sure that I can say the budget was very minimal at best.
Yeah.
But as
with you talking about no spoilers, I mean, like, if you've seen the trailer, you've essentially seen the movie. There's not a whole lot of spoilers really to be had here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for slasher fans in general, if you exclude the Scream franchise or whatever, or whodunits, you know why you're going to see these movies. There's an entire point to it. It's called the kills. But be ready. If you would do me that favor you do on the show every week, if there are those uninitiated that don't know what In a Violent Nature is, why don't you let them know what it's all about?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You can just pretty much say it's a slasher. Dude walks through the woods, but when a locket is removed from a collapsed fire tower in the woods that entombs the rotting corpse of Johnny, a vengeful spirit spurred on by a horrific 60-year-old crime, his body is resurrected and becomes hell-bent on retrieving it. And hijinks ensue.
Yeah, there it is right there. And it sounds very similar to a lot of other movies, but is this a carbon copy? Does it do anything new for the genre? We're going to talk about that right now. We're going to throw it to our guest first. Phil, did you have like a really deep anticipation for this? I'm asking you this actually knowing the answer because we already talked about this, weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
But just for the sake of the show, were you anticipating this highly?
Absolutely. I think I saw the trailer once, like months ago, and I was like, that's it. I'm sold. I'll be there opening night. Don't want to see anything else. And yeah, I was not let down. This is my favorite movie of the year. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Loved it. Can't wait to dig in, talk about it, talk about the criticisms, bring it on. I'm ready. I'm ready to step in the steel cage and fight for this movie.
Damn, getting all frisky already. Shit. All
about
right.
to cut a Dusty Rhodes promo up in here.
Oh, that's what I like to hear, man. Woo! All right.
Hey, something, baby.
Well, we'll go lock and step with age here. Be ready.
Oh, I was like, where's this going? Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it cracked my most anticipated when we did that episode, but it was definitely on my radar. I think it's hard not to be, you know. I've been on the show saying I'm kind of somewhat disappointed with horror this year already. And so this was kind of something that I was using as like my guiding light. Like, let me get through these other movies to kind of get here. And then, yeah, I almost had a chance to see a screener a couple months ago, or maybe like 4 or 5 weeks, Justin, I don't know, something like that. But it was one of those screeners where it was like attached to somebody else's name. Anyways, so I was kind of bummed about that. You were trying to
illegally watch it. Look at
well,
you.
as a member of the press, I should be able to have access. So I was then I went to see it in theaters this weekend, and yeah, I've got some thoughts. Definitely got some thoughts on it.
And Jeremy, I remember you sending, I'm pretty sure, not to speak for you, but I remember you sending, I think, the trailer in our group chat and being like, can't fucking wait for this, like in all caps or something like that, if I remember correctly.
That sounds like me. That sounds like me. Yeah. I'm like, fuck yeah, dude, I'm stoked. Like, I just need to have like standard stock Jeremy responses for like our text, because like that's basically what it is most times. Like, I'm fucking stoked.
You know, like when somebody texts you and you're like on the phone and it's like you can hit like, what's up? I'm in a meeting. That can be yours. Stoked.
Fuck it has to be fucking stoked.
John Carpenter's the thing.
How I'm like, oh my god, yeah. So instantly the trailer for this movie, I loved how it was shot. I loved how bleak it kind of looked. Any slasher movie and I'm instantly, you've got my attention. This one just looked like it was something different and special while also seeming a little familiar at the same time. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm fucking stoked that that the Alamo had some screenings of it, because I really didn't want to rough it and go to AMC. But I wanted to see this in a theater because it's an original horror film, you know, more on the independent level, and it's, you know, being available to be seen on the big screen, which I'm all about. So I was definitely really anticipating this one. And as far as like expectation, I didn't really go into this one with any expectation. I do know that from what I was reading ahead of time, because I tried not to read too much, but just from like scrolling and seeing people's posts and shit like that for people that saw it before me, I very early on gathered that this was going to be a movie that people either they loved and they supported, or they just detested and hated what it was. So I kind of went into it going, you know, I hope that it's solid and it works for me. So
very much so. I felt the same way. I had the opportunity to see this early as well, and I'll say this much though: seeing a screener is cool for to see a movie early and all that at home, but nothing beats seeing it on the big screen. And seeing this on the big screen this last week at Alamo Drafthouse, hosted by BluBrry's wife herself, Faye, who crushed the intro, having not even seen the movie. You know, absolutely amazing experience, and we'll get into like crowd reactions and stuff in a little bit here, but just seeing this with an audience, I felt like I was transported back to the 80s. I shit you not. Like, I love those communal experiences, and in a world right now where, you know, if you're on the Twitter sphere, you hear a lot of bad you know, things. People have bad things that happen to them at the theater. They see people on their phones, they get in fights. Like, it's a rough it's a rough time out there for theater goers, but like this was one of those special times, and that's why I support that communal experience, because you can have magical moments like I had with this movie, and it just transcends in a way the genre, and it reminds me of like what it would be like to, you know, have been born earlier and gotten to live through the 80s, you know. Definitely hyped for this one. So when I saw it early, I kind of kept mum a little bit. I gave a little bit of a blurb, but y'all know pretty much how I feel on this one from the get-go if you saw our social post. So jumping right in on the movie itself, much like Brady said, this movie opens with a group of friends discovering a locket. hanging on the remains of a fire tower. A character pockets it, and then moments later, very slowly, the corpse of Johnny rises from the ground.
Ernest Scared Stupid style.
Yeah, basically, I'm like, oh, this is what was crazy about the opening to me was like, I was like, because I was watching it at home for the first time, I was like, oh, dude, did the fucking screener freeze? Because like nothing's happening. Like it's just the same static shot with like a little bit of movement in the background for a few moments, and then once he emerges in rage, the movie just kicks off immediately, and then I was just in for the ride. I don't know about you guys.
So let's put one thing out there very early, and this is from my perception, is this movie is what happens when you suppress something as beloved as Friday the 13th from moviegoers and consumers for 15 years. Eventually, someone's going to go, we're going to make a Friday the 13th movie because the studio won't do it. The people behind it are in a legal battle, which who gives a shit about that? We're not getting a new Jason movie. We're not getting a Friday the 13th movie. So we're just going to make our own. It was just a matter. I mean, dude, the fan films have been hidden for a while. Like Never Hike Alone, came out and is wildly popular to where I think Mondo even released the score from that
And it's
movie,
solid.
which is like,
There's a sequel to it as well, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, like, dude, I understand that, Victor Miller wants his slice of the pie and he fucking deserves it. He created, a story and a character that's like literally printed millions of dollars, which he's gotten none of. So I get why they're in a legal battle and I want that dude to get paid. But at the same time, like, dude, they're leaving so much money on the table still, because they're not making a new Friday the 13th film. So here we go. Let's just be honest. This movie is a Friday the 13th film and here's the kicker. It's from the perspective of Jason. You're literally following Jason for the entirety of a movie. So like typically in slashers, you follow young adults and who stumble into Jason's realm, and then Jason only pops up when he's picking them off one by one. This flips that trope to where no, you're following Jason, Johnny, in this movie, and now it's just the young adults that pop up periodically just for Jason / Johnny to dismember, right? So, this is really unique because many, 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 many years ago, there was talks, and it was in active pre-production of a found footage Friday the 13th film. And at one point, Adam Green from, the Hatchet franchise was approached to direct it. And he was just like, I just don't know how you make a Friday the 13th found footage movie work. Honestly, I think this movie is the closest that we'll ever probably get to seeing that realized. Because even though this was not shot like a found footage movie, it very much had elements that felt like a found footage movie. Like there was a documentary camera crew following this slasher as he stumbled upon these young adults. So I just wanted to throw it out there early and say, like, let's be honest, this is something that we're all going to discuss in great detail.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear to me. Like this is at its core, technically speaking, a Friday the 13th movie. The lore is pretty much the same. The killer moves in the same way, very similar
looks,
design,
very similar.
and his mannerisms, and that didn't bother me. Even the same setting. Now again, camp slashers are a thing to their own, but Jason is the king of that subgenre for sure. And I had no issue with this. I definitely didn't look at it as a ripoff by any means, because there have been so many other movies that have honestly done that since then, that it just felt like a love letter to it. Like obviously we know they couldn't get the rights to do that with this movie. And everything worked for the most part in terms of like reflecting on those movies for influence, I felt, and actually in some instances did things better than a lot of the Friday the 13th movies. Surpassed.
Sure. Yeah, part 2 especially. Friday the 13th part 2, like sitting around a campfire telling the lore of Johnny, Jason, or whatever. And the lady at the very end of the movie, I forgot who she played in Friday Part 2,
Or
but
two.
Vicky.
Yeah.
She's
Right,
Vicky. She's brown underwear girl. I always call her because she's always wearing those. I honestly, I always hate how. Again, ladies, no hate that lived in the 80s, like you're all my mom's age at this point, but I hated how baggy her fucking panties were, and they were brown. I'm like, gross. Who the fuck wears brown panties, dude? But I love her character.
Brown panties.
And I love her character in that movie, and I love her kill in that movie. You know, she's got the lightning, and Jason's coming at her from that perspective with the butcher knife. So it was a cool thing to see her in the movie. I mean, she's her character's name in this is the Woman, I think.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't even have a name, so but cool to see her pop up though. Brown underwear lady.
I think what I was most excited for was the POV of the killer and them experimenting with that and saying, hey, because we're going to show you what the killer does in between, because even though you kind of already know, like, the Friday the 13th remake tried to show how Jason gets around right through tunnels, and that was either widely panned or applauded for getting that perspective. But this one was like, cool, like as somebody who I don't want to speak for you, Phil, but I think I'm probably the biggest Friday the 13th purist on this podcast. And so being able to get that point of view of like, like what really is going on? Like seeing the angle of, when you see Jason in the background of a Friday the 13th movie, well, what did it take to get there? What is he seeing? Like, what is he looking at? Like, is he just like looking off into space because maggots are eating his brain? Like what's going on? So I appreciated that, but I felt like, and Justin and I are gonna disagree on this because, like, it's similar issues to what I had with the first Omen. Is it did take me out of it, and it was too similar to those movies. Like, dude, you can pinpoint the different Friday the 13th movies that they rip off or carbon copy throughout the entire film, and one or two is fine, but everything is the same. And just because you shoot it from the killer's perspective, but you still give the same things. I mean, he's fucking walking down into the water like part 7. He when he comes out of the earth, he's like part 6. It's just, there's always something that I can look at and go, oh, that's this Jason. Oh, that's this Friday the 13th. Oh, you literally just took this from that. That took me out of it. So I was not super impressed in terms of storyline and them blurring the difference between homage and ripoff, because I felt like he had such an opportunity, the director Chris Nash, to do something very, very different, but I felt like he missed that mark because all he did was show you a different perspective. You're, like I said, you're getting same conversations, you're getting same campfire, like Phil said.
But I was totally okay with it. I mean, all those valid points. But yeah, I was totally fine with it. I wouldn't say like rip off, but it's a slasher movie. There's kids, they're in the woods. I don't know what else he could have done. Like, he's going to kill these kids, and it's a very simple formula. I had no issues with like, oh, this is too much like Jason. I don't know. I was just stoked to have a simple movie with like this sort of campfire lore. They tell this ghost story of Johnny and it's real. And he just wakes up and starts killing people, and very simple. I've wanted this movie for so many years. This is like the movie I've pictured in my head. Like, can't we just put kids at a lake or in the woods, create
exactly
a new
what
killer,
I've said. Yeah,
create a new killer, give them a backstory, give them a badass mask. I like this mask more than Jason's mask. I don't know if that's like controversial to say, but like the 1890s
How dare you,
firefighter. I mean, it's more Jason's mask is more iconic, of course.
Sure. No, but I get it. This mask was really fucking sick.
Yeah, and Chris Nash said that he got the inspiration for the mask by reading a cracked.com article, like scary mask from history. And he saw this one of a 1900s firefighter and was like, that's incredibly creepy. So he just hung on to that.
Yeah, I also thought,
to your point,
real quick, I was just going to say, I was reading one article where Chris Nash, and I think something that really worked for me with this POV was, he was like, I kind of made like I wanted to make a No Country for Old Men. Like that's what he wanted to do with this movie. And because if you remember that one, like that really didn't have any music in it either. You know, it's all atmospheric sounds like we were getting here, where it's his feet crunching leaves or bugs going, which I will say, sidebar, the end scene, the end chase where those bugs and the frogs and the crickets are going crazy, that took me right back to a summer like growing up in the woods. But I do think it's funny that he was like, yeah, I tried to make a No Country for Old Men, because that movie has tons of slasher DNA in it. And even this character of Johnny is kind of, you know, I said he's a ripoff of Jason, but he's even got that Anton Chigurh kind of running through him too, where it's just the same way he walks and just, you know, purposeful. Like there's one end goal and I'm going to get there no matter what. And I would even say there are parts of this movie where he does break away. So it's not all bad, where he does break away from that Jason mindset, and it's very much like this is an assassin, a killer. With as soon as I get done with this one, I move to the next one. As soon as I get done with this one, I move to the next one. It's all just cold.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up No Country for Old Men, because I was just saying on like a few episodes back, I was like, if you put a knife in Anton Chigurh's hand, throw a mask on him, we're talking about one of the greatest slasher movies of all time.
Yeah. He needed a mask, actually. His face was fucked up in that movie. Jesus.
that pumpkin pie haircut he had was fucked up too.
Yeah. Pumpkin pie haircutted freak.
But no, to your point, what you were saying, Brady, all the stuff that you were like, oh, it's this, this, and this. I feel like those were all conscious decisions that they made. It wasn't like, like we're trying to make something new and original, and here's what we're trying to do. Like, I think that the stuff that you had issues with, as far as the story and pinpointing exactly which Friday the 13th films that they were gonna homage or rip off, what have you, I feel like that shit was all very intentional.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
Very deliberate. And
I just feel like it does run an issue with people like me who see that, and instead of being like, wow, that's a really good call out, it's, wow, I could go watch a movie that I enjoy more by watching part 4. Or
see, I'll say this much. Part 4, amazing. The Friday series has amazing films in it. But I found this movie to be more compelling than the majority of the Friday series. And I would dare say that in terms of like my favorite slasher franchise as a whole, Friday's probably my favorite, even above Halloween as a whole, collectively.
Jeremy has left the chat.
Yeah,
it
Jeremy
took
is
something.
rolling.
Listen. I said collectively, like in terms of enjoyment throughout the entire franchise. That's a podcast for a whole other discussion. But the movie takes it from an art house perspective, which we've never seen before. So that is fresh automatically. And I like the concept of that. I like that it's an experiment to go, not just are we seeing it from his perspective, but we're doing it in this style that, and again, we have acting that's intentionally bad in the movie on purpose, connected to this art house style of filmmaking that really connected in a very strange way that just for me, at least, for the most part, worked almost all the way through the movie. In the way that I view this is when Friday the 13th came out, The Burning was already being made. The script was already prepared for that movie, which had a similar premise, similar storyline. And Jason himself, that whole thing is based on Cropsey, which is an, upstate New York, New Jersey myth. We had Madman. We had a bunch of stuff in the 80s that was very derivative of Jason. So I like that this homages those movies as a whole, even though we all just point to Jason as being like the primary influence. But it works. Somehow it works. And I think in terms of myself, I'm a huge Friday the 13th fan, and I've just been fucking salivating for another one of these movies. And the fact that we got something so close in spirit, you know what I mean? Like thinking about homage versus ripoff. We've talked about this on the show all the time. If you look at the superhero genre, dude, like that would be like every single superhero movie. Well, that's ripping off this, that's ripping off that. They're all within the same vein, right? But they try to do something different. And I think that this movie just wanted to do something simple, bare bones, stripped down, nitty gritty. And let's be very clear, way more fucking brutal than a lot of the Friday the 13th movies. Tom Savini stuff aside in those movies, this movie is mean-spirited as fuck. it wants to make you feel something from these kills. And the killer is just unrelenting. Like, I love how when you're from his perspective, or, you know, you're basically just watching him. It feels like this forbidden thing that you're not supposed to be allowed to do, like a voyeur, like almost like peeping Tom, if you will, where you're just watching these kills. For example, I'm getting ahead of myself, but you know, when he goes into the lake, you're watching that from a perspective of someone that's actually watching a murder live. Not that you're him watching it. You see him go into the water, and then you see a girl started to get drowned, and then it moves the perspective over to the other side, where you see her getting pulled down into the water and drowned and killed, and then he walks out. It's like you're there witnessing a murder for real.
Yeah.
You know, so I felt like this charge of electricity, of energy watching this. Like, we've really never seen anything quite like this. You know, Jeremy, I'm sure you'll be able to chime in on this as well because you're a big fan of this, but Behind the Mask was probably the closest thing we've seen to this in terms of anything where you're watching it from that perspective. So at least for me, I was really connected to a lot of it. Not all of that stuff worked for me, for sure, but the majority of it did.
So the lake scene, it's interesting. That scene was supposed to be like next level brutal, like the yoga scene, where they were gonna do like a camera that literally went underwater with him as he like walked across the bottom of the lake, and then he was gonna use one of his hooks to like smash the hook into her foot and start pulling her down, and like that kill was supposed to be way more violent and brutal. But on the day that they were going to film this insane scene, they had really, really bad weather and they were on a tight shooting schedule, so they just kind of had to do what they could do. And
I
it
loved how
never
it
got
turned
shot
out
the way
though.
that they had.
It turned out
dude,
amazing.
I think it came out great.
We don't even know the exact reason why she died, other than the idea that she drowned. And the character's name was Brody, which obviously that alone right there is fucking great. And I loved the lead into the death as well, where it's just, you know, two people that are slightly infatuated with one another, and they're talking about possibly hooking up. And you know, I'm like, man, thinking back to how simple these kinds of movies used to be, where we didn't have to give a shit about super deep character development or anything like that. It's just like, it's very basic, you know, very flat, very just on the nose, and you know what I mean? Like surface level, if you will, which for me was a breath of fresh air. I'm like,
yeah,
you gave me what I wanted. Is a stripped down slasher movie where I'm not, it's not trying to be anything but that. That's why I think, I'm not sure if you guys also felt this way as well, but that's why I felt like the acting was intentionally bad.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the acting was terrible. And I thought the dialogue, I've heard it compared to like the Friday the 13th video game dialogue. And that makes a lot of sense. I don't know. I'm torn sometimes because this has come up a couple other times where, you know, Justin, like you said, movies in the 80s, like Friday the 13th is not known for its dialogue, right? It's not known for it. It wasn't winning any screenplay awards. It is bad, but I also feel like we're 30, 40 years removed from that, and horror movies have evolved, right? So you don't necessarily have to take every aspect of that. And so I feel like for me personally, them taking purposefully bad dialogue is kind of lazy. Like that's how it came across in this movie for me. I was like, you don't like, it doesn't have to be that bad. Like it's like literally when it opens and they're finding that locket and they're calling each other by name every fucking sentence. I was like, nobody talks like that. I say Justin's name maybe once a week.
That's factually incorrect. You said it on Saturday like 15 times. So
well, I was also drunk on Saturday. So
these kids were drunk and smoking weed too in the fucking
They weren't
woods.
At that point.
I wasn't that taken out of the movie by the acting. I didn't even really notice it until rewatch. I saw it last night at the Alamo, and I was like, yeah, there's a few moments where this is pretty bad acting, and I wasn't sure if that was intentional or not. I think it was, but I will take that over radio silence dialogue where every goddamn character is a comedian and they got the perfect quip lined up, and I can practically see the writers writing out the jokes for each character. It's like nobody talks like that either.
Sure.
Okay. And it's getting to the point where, so it's like, okay, so every character is a comedian now and they got the perfect quip lined up. That is more distracting and unbelievable than in a violent nature.
It all depends on tone and context and what you're going for. I know what movie you're talking about too. Believe me, I already know. But when you're going for horror comedy versus straight mean-spirited slasher, you know, that's how I approach my perspective on writing and character dialogue and such. I honestly wanted the acting to be bad in this. I went into this hoping and expecting to get an art house style throwback to the movies that I know and love and that I have a passion for from the 80s that don't exist anymore. No one makes them. Let's be very fucking clear about that. So that, to your point, Brady, cool. I wouldn't want an elevated quote unquote version of what this could be. It's elevated visually. It's elevated in terms of the filmmaking style. I wouldn't want that. I don't care about the dialogue. When I watch the Friday the 13th movies, I'm going to see, usually, I can't speak for most of the characters in this movie, semi-attractive or very attractive 20-somethings playing teenagers getting brutally murdered in extreme and fun, interesting, creative ways. That's what I wanted out of this movie. And for the most part, that's literally what I got. We have to get to the kills because, listen, you know, the only thing that comes remotely close to this and still tops it, in my opinion, is Terrifier 2 in terms of the grotesque nature of the over-the-top kills that we've gotten over the past 10 years. Still didn't touch that for me. But that yoga kill is one of the most visceral, insane experiences I've had in the theater with a crowd in the past 15 years.
Yeah.
It was insane. Our crowd went fucking wild. And it's an interesting perspective having seen the movie, and I knew it was coming. So I was just timing it in my head like, okay, people are going to start roaring right about now. And it happened. And it started to just build and build and build. And by the end of it, people were cheering and standing up and clapping in the fucking theater. It was insane. Did that happen at either of your theaters at all? Any of your theaters?
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. A lot of like super audible reactions, man.
So last night, after, not to jump too far ahead, but the beheading scene with the log splitter machine, which, by the way, talk about brutal. Holy shit. I don't know how they did that effect because I didn't see a cut throughout that.
Dude, I noticed that. I noticed that because I paid attention on the second time.
Yeah.
That his eyes are still blinking. He's still moving.
Was that an animatronic or something? Or
I would love to know because I was sitting there watching it the second time. And that's why, and not to, go off on a tangent here, but a lot of people were complaining, well, why didn't they just split him down the middle? And I know why they didn't split him down the middle, because they were able to use an in-camera trick where they were able to cut the head off and you still saw the dude there and his eyes were still blinking leading up to the fucking blade cutting the head off.
Yeah, but I did see a couple get up and walk out after that part.
No shit.
I was like, see ya. But I gotta say, man, that scene, that felt like I was watching like some Faces of Death shit. Like,
no shit.
Well, it's so slow and so methodical.
Yeah.
Like it just takes its time there. And with the lack of score, all you're hearing is the sound of that log cutter. And a personal experience, I grew up down the street. One of my best friends, his family, they did logging, right? That was like their business. And if I wanted to play like video games with him or something, his dad would say, yeah, help him and do this and cut some logs. So I used one of those things and I remember how powerful they were. And I was always scared to fuck with one of those things. And then this movie just brought that fear to life. Like I can't remember any other horror movie ever using one of those for a kill.
No.
And to your point, Justin, I got to say that I thought the kills in this were way more, they affected me more than Terrifier 2, because Terrifier 2 has like this sort of wacky, campy vibe.
Prankster.
Right.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
And this just felt like I was watching people being murdered.
Well, exactly.
on film.
Exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, much to what I said a few moments ago, that's why this one affected me so much, and being so into true crime and serial killers and all that stuff on the side of the horror stuff myself, you know, that's what it felt like. Like a true real version, even though, you know, I see some criticisms from people, and I'm not sure if you guys felt this way or not, but I still had fun with this, though. The crowd was still laughing.
Yeah.
You know, that I think that's why the juxtaposition between the real life style of the killing versus like the shitty dialogue that Brady didn't like and the bad acting, you know, that kind of married those two together, where it still allowed you to have some levity, some time to breathe and laugh and chuckle at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of because I've read a lot of reviews from people that didn't like the movie, and they're like, oh, half the theater was laughing at how shitty it was. And I don't think it's that. I think for me personally, last night, it's like sometimes a moment is so extreme, the only appropriate response is to just laugh, because you're like, Jesus Christ, like this is, and you just laugh. So I don't think, I mean, maybe there are some people laughing at how, because they think it's a shitty movie, but I think it's more so that. Maybe, I don't know. I can't speak for him.
No, I mean, you know, for all the shit I've given it so far, there were moments like with these kills, they're just so brutal that I would laugh too. And one, it's like that uncomfortableness of it, where you're like, oh my God. I mean, there's been, I think I did the same thing for Talk to Me last year, when they cut to the like the demons pulling that kid apart, and I did the same thing there. I laughed because it's just like what I do when I feel nervous or uncomfortable. Sure. But then there were things like so over the top that you can't help but laugh at it, and not in a negative way, but just like a little kid kind of way, like where you're like, oh my God, like that's just fantastic, like you have to laugh.
You're giddy from the moment, right?
Like when there are some legit funny moments, like when he breaks the window at the ranger station and just tosses the severed head in.
Dude,
I was like,
when he
the
throws
whole
the body
theater.
at the wall. Yeah.
Oh my God,
I laughed so hard.
That's when I fell in love with this movie, when he just picks up that headless body and slams it into the glass.
Well, dude, he breaks the door with the head, right? And then it rolls in perfectly.
Yeah.
And then he drags the body in just nonchalantly, and then just tosses the fucking body to break the glass.
It
was amazing, dude.
Yeah.
It was just,
loved it.
I loved the shit out of that. It was so funny.
I would actually, you know, I think the yoga kill is fantastic. But I gotta say, I think my favorite kill of the whole movie is probably that first kill, like up against the tree, and he's just yanking and severs the top of the head, and the headphones are playing, which is like some of the only music you hear in the entire movie. And then just that deliberate walk, because he sees the shirt and he's like, oh, I'll take it to the ranger station.
You make a great point. You make a great point, Brady. And I liked this aspect because when I watched it with Danielle, the wife at home, you know, she's one of those that has gotten used to the formula watching all these slashers with me. And she's like, I didn't like that first kill. That wasn't very powerful. I go, well, that must mean that they want to give us blue balls and they want to build up to something much better. And that's what they did. And within 15 minutes of the movie starting, we get that kill. And I felt so bad because it was like the biggest loser of the bunch, right? He's just out there smoking weed. You know he's not going to go get laid with those girls at the gas station that he met. You know damn well he told the story, and Johnny's fucking pissed. He heard the whole thing before his own eyes to his own ears, and he's like, nope, you're getting it, bro. And that one, you hear the fucking sound of his skull just breaking against that tree, and then it just lops off.
You know what I will say, because of course I have to have something negative to say, is I loved practical effects. I thought, you know, had a lot of kudos to them for doing that and not just going the CGI route. But I felt like there were some choices made where it's like, okay, maybe if we go super over the top of this kill, nobody's going to pay attention to how bad the practical effects look in the aftermath. Like there were some scenes, like I felt like you didn't need to show like dude's head in the ranger station. Looked awful. And that one I laughed at because it looked really bad, like his eyes.
That's the entire fucking point of it, though, because when those kills would happen in the 80s, the head did look bad. It never looked good.
We're not in the 80s. And also, here's the thing, too. The juxtaposition of shitty aftermath of effects and this beautiful movie they're making was too much for me. I can't reconcile those two.
Ladies and gentlemen, poor Brady could not handle the two things mixed together. It's a tragedy. Dude, the head's intentional. The bad head and also the budget being as small
So
as
then
it
he made
was.
so then he made a bad movie. You're saying everything you're saying
Oh
is,
my
well, he
God.
did this bad intentionally. He did this bad intentionally. He made
That
a bad
doesn't mean the
movie then.
movie's bad. It's
He
an
did everything
homage.
bad
It's
intentionally.
an
It's more
homage.
than an homage. It's a ripoff.
It's definitely not a ripoff. Oh my God.
Every rebuttal you have to me is, well, Friday the 13th did this. Friday the 13th did this. That's what the
I
point
said.
I'm making.
I said a bunch of different movies did it, not
You
just
said
Friday the
two other
13th. A
movies. You
whole
said
genre
Madman,
did it
You said Madman,
for an
The
entire
Burning, and Friday the
decade.
13th.
For an entire decade, they did it. I'm pretty positive if they wanted to CG a realistic looking head in there, they probably could have done that. The entire direction of the movie seemed intentional to me.
Let me jump in. Steven Kostanski did all the special effects for this movie. Steven Kostanski, you guys everyone listening should know this dude's name. He made The Void. He made Leprechaun Returns. He made motherfucking Psycho Goreman. And not just made as in the practical effects realm. I mean, like, he wrote and directed those movies, or the dude is a brilliant fucking filmmaker. This thing was shot in Canada, and I'm pretty sure this is a mostly Canadian crew that did this thing. And it's funny because you guys are, Brady, you're like, oh, the head looked like shit. And I guess because my brain automatically goes to, like, I'm watching a slasher film. Like, I wasn't looking for realism in it to the point that I was like, that looked fucking rad. Like, that head looked rad. I loved how it looked. I like how the head looked, and I never once looked at it and went, wow, that doesn't look real. It looks bad. I don't know. Maybe that's just because my brain immediately was turned on for, like, we're watching a slasher movie, and that's kind of what you expect in those moments. So I don't know. I didn't look at that scene and go, oh, well, that looked bad. I had the exact opposite response. I was like, that looked fucking awesome.
I mean, and to your point, Jeremy, when you look at Psycho Goreman, for example, that is a movie that as well intentionally homaged some of the bad elements, some of the same kinds of effects from the 80s, and did it for the fans to enjoy. There's people getting decapitated in that movie where the effects look just as cheesy, and the movie's being shot with HD cameras, and yeah, it does look different. It doesn't have the same effect as a movie shot with cheap film stock back in the 80s where you could hide that kind of thing. But now when we watch movies on Blu-ray 4K in the theater, we can see how fake the effects looked. And I that's what, to your point as well, Brady, that's why I know it's intentional. So that's why I don't care. And I also do want to see it. If you're going to do an homage to that, give it to me. You know what I mean? If you're going to go all the way with that, do it. But that's just my perspective on it.
Sure.
And Chris Nash, he has a special effects background as well. So between the two of them, I feel like whatever effects wise is in the movie. Sorry, take out this fucking cough drop.
Don't die on us now, Phil. Don't die on us.
I feel like whatever's in the movie, it was intentional, whether you like it or not. Personally, I don't mind that the head doesn't look 100% believable. I appreciate the spirit that they were going for, but
and to be honest about this as well, before we move on here, we have big budgeted horror movies that have effects that look bad, that intentionally or unintentionally, which we'll never know. So I mean, to me at this point in, like, 2024, when we see this stuff, it's hard to decipher which direction they're trying to go, but I'm just in for the ride. And once I'm there, 9 times out of 10, I don't let stuff like that bother me. But I will talk about the ending of the movie, which is going to make or break this movie, I feel like, for a lot of people. And I will finally agree with Brady on something a little bit here. So,
oh my God, it's a miracle.
I didn't care for the ending of the movie.
How come?
Well, actually, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God. Okay, well, here's the thing. And Jeremy made a great point to me via text the other day.
Jeremy, just we're in agreement here. Cool with the
100%. I loved the ending.
So
I fucking love the ending.
Again,
tag team match. Here we go, baby.
Sweet.
Yep.
Again, didn't hate it, just didn't understand what it was trying to do, other than just to transcend what we expected and go a different direction. You're going to build up so well to something so great, and then you give me nothing. You bore me
Okay.
for 15 minutes.
Are you talking specifically like once she's in the truck or
Yes.
when it?
Yes.
Okay.
Leading up to that, everything is absolutely pretty much perfect in my eyes. So we have the character of Chris, who is our final girl, and cool. We're not in this movie, you know, and I'll connect with Brady on this too. The movie doesn't do anything really to connect you with these characters. It is, you know, surface level at best slasher. So I literally don't care about any of these characters at all. I just want to see them all terrified, brutalized, perish, go on in the woods. And she's chosen as our main final girl, which leading up to her getting in the truck worked for me. I was totally cool with it. Her buddy who gets fucking hacked to death with the axe to the face
That was
over and
brutal as
over.
shit. Yeah.
Oh man, I literally wanted to pull out my dick and jack off all over the screen because I was so hard from that. Not even joking. Seriously, I was like, dude, he just hit him like I counted almost 30 times. I shit you not that he hit him with the axe.
It was
right?
brutal.
Dude, I laughed so fucking hard because it was kind of that Scooby-Doo moment. It's like, all right, like we're gonna lure him back to the water tower, and then, you know, I'll distract him. You go and set a trap up. And so like all of a sudden insert Johnny into the shot, and our final dude was like, "Hey, you ugly motherfucker!" And then like instantly, before you can hardly even get the entire word out, Johnny smashes him in the face with the fucking axe, right? Just splits his fucking head, and then just over and over again, it's just whacking this dude in the head. He's already dead, but he's just literally turning his head from a solid to a liquid.
And
Like
the
he hits him so many
sound.
times.
Mhm. The
Dude, it's
squelching.
just
And the sound,
it's just oh, dude, amazing. And it's just ooze. So I loved watching our final girl's reaction to all of this. Like she's like terrified as she would be in real life, watching this literal monster smash this dude over and over and over again, who's a guy who she obviously knows and is friends with. And all that plan shit goes to the wayside because she's like, "Holy fuck, this is a beast. This is an animal that I'm watching mangle my friend to death." Right? So she literally sets down the can of gasoline and puts the supernatural Johnny's locket that his mother gave him around the gas can, and she was like, "I'm the fuck out." Like typically in these movies, it's like, you know what? Even if like the dude was gonna fucking get killed, it'd be like, I gotta see this through because we gotta stop this person. So like typically the final girl is way more heroic in these movies, right? That, you know, so I was expecting like, okay, like she's gonna go set up a trap to catch Johnny and put his body to rest again. No, she was the fuck out, which I feel like is way more of a realistic approach to what would really happen. But I laughed so fucking hard at that scene because I'm like, okay, this did the exact opposite of what I thought it was going to do. And this will segue into the end of this movie, which is why I love it so much because, you know, look at Texas Chainsaw, 2022, right? What everybody was expecting for how this movie was to end was literally how that movie ended, right? Like everybody was expecting, well, this the final chick is going to be dragged out of the car, or you know, the lady who picks her up, the woman, is she's billed in the credits, um is going to get pulled away from, you know, by Johnny, and maybe the final girl will, you know, jump in the driver's seat and make it out. Like either way, someone's going to get got by Johnny.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we expect because that's the norm in this genre. So I loved that the filmmakers decided instead to build the tension, to build the tension, to build the tension, to
Yep.
build the tension that, okay, he's coming, he's coming, he's coming, he's coming. And then, spoiler, because this is a spoiler filled episode, he never does because he got the fucking locket. He didn't need to pursue her anymore. You know, he got the fucking locket. That was good enough for him. I love the idea of she gets away, right? Because, like, I always use like sharks in these scenarios with a lot of these movies with these fucking killers that are just animals, right? How many shark attack victims, you know, get to go back into the ocean and see the shark that attacked them, right? Like that shark is gone, and that person got as far away as they could from that shark, and that's kind of how I take this is she escaped from this fucking beast that killed all of her friends. Like, she's the fuck out. She's just trying to get out of there, and the fucking shark, if you will, got what it's wanted. And now I love the idea of he's just out there. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Nobody put his body to rest. Nobody killed him. Nobody got the best
Well,
of
it's
him.
Halloween.
He
man.
won.
It's Halloween.
He won.
The ending is Halloween.
Absolutely. He won. But I love the fact that that ending built and built and built and built, and it didn't give you what you expected. And to me, I found myself like anticipating it so much that when we didn't get it, I wasn't disappointed. I was like, you know what? The ending was the most tension I feel like we got in the entire fucking movie.
I agree. Yeah,
Okay.
I thought it was a perfect ending. You don't need one last jump scare. Like, what do audiences want? Johnny steps out of the woods, kills both of them, lunges towards the camera, fade to black, Disturbed starts playing or something. It's like, no, you don't need any of that shit. It was fucking perfect. And like Justin said, yeah, very Halloween. It's showing you all the places that Johnny's been, implying that he is still out there. That is scary enough. You don't need another kill. And
I'm with it.
I just thought it was perfect. I mean, could the truck scene have been edited down a minute or two?
Cut the
Sure.
fuck down. Give
Sure.
it, make it 5 fucking minutes, not 15
I
minutes
loved it.
of the
But
worst.
I loved
Again,
it.
if we're gonna, I did not love it. Listen, chick from Friday 2, you're awesome. Love seeing you in the movie. You haven't acted in fucking 15 years, 20 fucking 5 years, 30 years. She has, but I digress. It was cool seeing her in the movie. They had no chemistry in the scene. It felt really fucking weird. I didn't mind that the acting was bad where it needed to be bad, but here I was like, where are we going here?
I thought
What
the
it-
acting was fine.
What is it trying to
between
do?
these two.
I did too.
That's my point.
I did
What is
too,
it? What
Phil.
is it? Where is it going here, though?
I stand with Phil.
It's leading to nothing. I felt no build up to this. I felt annoyed that I, especially the second time, going, this isn't going anywhere. You could have made it a 5-minute scene, cut to the shots of where is he now, movie ends. Fine, cool.
But I appreciate the nature
Because
of the conversation.
the bear story, nonsense. The delivery, it's trying to do the Indianapolis scene from Jaws. Let's be very fucking clear here, and has little to no impact in comparison. That's where I got frustrated by it, because they're trying to do something cool and different when, again, and I can't, I'm not writing the movie. I can't figure out what I would want to write in there instead of that. The idea, the concept seems pretty clear, seems decent. Had the execution been better, that's my issue with it. I don't think they hit the nail on the head at the ending for me. Aside from those shots, I like those shots, guys. I like the Halloween aspect. It's a very clear homage to the ending of Halloween, which I thought was cool. I don't mind that there's not a kill at the end, because I didn't expect there to be. I really didn't. I thought the movie busted its nut early, and that it was going to let you, that last kill with that axe to the face, I did not expect to see anything else after that. I definitely knew that our final girl would probably live, but I don't know. Brady, what did you think of the ending? Did you love the ending? Oh my God, you're going to come in here and be like, it was my favorite part of the movie.
No, I didn't like the ending. And my issue, I see both points,
Sure.
I could see how the nature of the conversation could be important. And like Phil said, that you get something out of it, right? The issues I had with it were you had such a great moment to end the movie with Chris, the final girl, just running in the woods. I thought that would have been great. I thought that would have been a better metaphor for the trauma that she's going to experience, than what they did. I think also taking a movie that you're following the perspective of the killer, and now taking the last 15 minutes of your movie and putting
that's
it
the other
squarely
part,
on
man.
these two characters.
You didn't commit to the bit fully, because once you lose that and you connect with her, the bit's done. It's over. It's gone.
I don't think it was like 15 minutes though, because I paid attention to this on
it's at least 10 minutes, Bill.
Well,
it's at least 10 minutes.
Okay, she sees Johnny killing the guy. We're following her in the woods now. That's really only it. And you get the scene in the truck.
No, I'm saying
I think you're downplaying how long the scene in the truck is.
The scene in the truck takes way too fucking long, is my point. Maybe it is 5 or 6, 7 minutes long, but it's excruciatingly bad because it takes way too long to get to the point. And her going, "Come here, honey. Come on, honey." She says honey like 100 fucking times in the scene. Like, again, it needed to be cut down a little bit.
Here's what I
my
think would have been
viewpoint on it.
better is, so what I do like about the end scene though is where she is staring off into the woods, and you're, even as the audience, like, do I see something? Because there
I
was a
loved
moment there
that. That was great.
where I was like, am I seeing Johnny right now? However, I think you could have done that with her running in the woods in the dark, and they're doing all those scenes, and then stop, and she stares into the woods and thinks she hears something, and then you end there.
I don't even mind that she gets picked up. I think this was probably an opportunity for them to go, hey, we have someone from one of the Friday the 13th movies. Let's write something cool for her to do something cool in the movie. Fans will like it, so on and so forth. It just didn't work for me all the way there. I think it could have been cut down drastically. And I get what you guys are saying about suspense. For me, it wasn't suspense. It was an annoyance. Which I guess you could equate to also being suspense, but for me, I already knew on the second watch that it's not leading to anything. So if you're going to lead to nothing, then the suspense builds to zero. So,
well, I know I watched it with my girlfriend last night, and through that whole truck scene, she was like turned to the side. She's not great with like, suspense and gore and stuff. So she wouldn't even look at the screen. She was like, I know something bad's about to happen. And I was like, exactly.
Do you know what my wife said? She said, when is this bitch going to shut the fuck up? Shit you not. When we watched it at home, she was like, this is boring. So, I mean, different perspectives, I guess, for sure.
I want to ask you all something real quick. So, I mean, I've only seen it in theaters, and so I think, Justin, you're the only one who's seen a screener at home.
No, Phil also saw it. Or
Phil, you have too?
Yeah.
So I guess this is more of a question for you two, but do you think that like this movie is going to be as impactful that watch at home for people?
I was very impacted by it. I watched it at like 2 p.m. on a sunny day, and I knew that this movie was going to stick with me because afterwards I went for a little run on the greenways, which are essentially like paved trails through the woods. It was a beautiful day out. Birds were chirping, blue skies. And as I was walking through the woods, I had this feeling as I was looking over. I was like, I'm a little freaked out right now, and it's a beautiful fucking day outside. I was like, I feel like I'm being watched or something. After each viewing of this movie, I had this feeling like it put me in a weird headspace. I don't know, man. It was like very sort of meditative in a way because there's no music. It's all this beautiful scenery, and I've never seen anything like it. So yeah, for a movie to be able to freak me out while I'm walking around on a beautiful day, I was like, oh shit, I haven't had this feeling in ever.
Nice.
So yeah, I found it oddly beautiful. I agree with Phil. And being someone that grew up in the woods and in nature and stuff like that, I loved the setting. It felt even more like I was in tune with nature and the location than any other camp slasher I've seen in a very long time because it was shot like real life. You know what I mean? Aside from the, we talk about the over the top kills and the bad acting and the dialogue and stuff. That's the real life aspect of the art house work that goes into the movie. And that's why I'm actually loving the fact that Jeremy loved it so much. Some people don't like art movies at all whatsoever. And I love that this took that viewpoint and said, we're going to make it that kind of movie, but in this style. And all of that worked for me. Like all the way.
I gotta say, man, because I want to throw this out there, because for me, it's really important for me to say, so many things that I loved about this movie, but the things that I loved the most about this movie is I love the fact that Johnny's spirit is tethered to this locket that his mother gave him. And by removing the locket, you awaken the beast. Yeah. Right. And he just wants the locket back.
Simple ghost story. Yeah.
I thought it was brilliant because, like, when you look at the source material that this is homaging, ripping off, however you want to put it, Jason is just like, okay, he's back and he's just going to kill everybody in his way. Something as simple as like, well, this is a locket that his mother gave him. His spirit is tethered to it, and he's not going to stop until he gets it back. is something that is so simple, but yet so effective, and I loved it so much. And for me, the kills are great, but my favorite scene in this entire fucking movie, and
I know where you're
found it
going to.
also to be
Yeah.
I found it also to be so sad and heartbreaking for that brief moment, was the fact that this is a character, you lose the fact that Jason died when he was a kid, right? They never really go back to it being like, oh, like he's like childlike.
Yeah.
When Johnny is going through the woods and there's a character that throws a set of keys, and there's a matchbox car that's attached to a keychain on the set of key on the keys. It stops him dead in his track because he's still eternally a child, even though
Dude,
he's like a
in
full-size man at this
our
point.
audience, Jeremy, there was an audible "aw" when he
Yeah,
picked
dude.
up the car.
He picks up the car and puts his back to a tree like he's literally a child, and he starts playing with the car. And as silly as that may sound if you haven't, watched the movie, the scene was so effective. It's also the first time that you really get to see his character design. It's the first time that you full on dead ass see his makeup and character design, which
Mhm.
I found to be so fucking brilliant. I loved his character design, but it's like I said, it's a really heartbreaking scene where it's like, "Oh shit, like he's still just a child that just wants to play with a toy," you know? And then like, he gets distracted and thinks about the locket, and he smashes the toy in his fucking hand, and like for me it's absolutely my favorite scene in the entire movie.
You know
So amazing.
what part of the backstory I liked a little bit too, because this kind of goes in with that, like that, that whole scene, you only really get that impact because of the backstory of the legend of
Mm,
Johnny, right?
sure.
But I was talking to Faye about it too. It's like you also, when you're talking to the Ranger, he's done this before. Like he's gone
Mm,
on a rampage 10 years before this, when the Ranger,
mhm.
who is, unfortunately goes to the woodcutter.
No, fortunately for us, though.
Right. But he's like, I had to put him down. But then it even happened, like the original thing happened years before that. Like I was like, man, that's just like, is this what happens every time?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep.
100%. There's great character moments. I think that and I just had on the show Jason Rockman from the Rockman Power Hour for Furiosa. Apparently he knows Rye Barrett, who played Johnny. I guess they're connected, they're friends in some way, and said he's a great fucking
That's cool.
guy. And I think he gave a great performance, absolutely fantastic performance
100%.
as Johnny. Again, it harkens back very close, extremely close to Kane Hodder's Jason, but I loved it. It was just really great. And again, going back to this, as we talked about earlier on the show, tell me, guys, any one of you, fucking tell me now, when do we get movies like this? I mean, the last thing I could possibly think of is the Hatchet movies. Seriously, we don't get guys
Yep.
like in terms of the prestige of it. I know we get a lot of independent, camp slashers all the time, and they go on Tubi, they go into fucking Redbox and whatever. And I'm not hating on those movies by any means at all. Independent horror rules, but there was a prestige to this. There was just this vibe to it that just felt so genuine that I think worked so much. And that's why I didn't let the ending ruin it for me, because I loved pretty much everything else about the movie. And I think we're down to it, guys. Final thoughts. And
Hold on, I have one question first before we get to final thoughts. A question for all of you guys.
Same here.
Okay.
I got a question.
It might be that we might have the same question. So what do they do in a sequel to this movie? Because I don't personally think that they can use that storytelling format again of just following the killer for a sequel. I don't know how it would work or be effective if
I
they're gonna
hope they
do it
do.
again.
I mean, I could watch. Give me 5
Okay.
more of those movies. I'm
Well,
on board.
here's the question: how many of you played the Friday the 13th game that came out a few years ago? That's I bought it first thing. I bought an Xbox just fucking for it. If you played that game, you're basically doing what this movie does. Like, so I loved that. That's what this was.
If you put it in a different setting, like I think Chris Nash said, maybe it was a joke in an interview, but he said that he would like to see it taken to like suburbia. So maybe if you do the POV,
That
of
would
the
be
killer
fucking
in
amazing.
suburbia, it
Oh,
could still
dude.
be effective because it's a different setting.
Can you imagine him just
Yeah.
walking down the sidewalk, then stopping, and peering on, almost like Michael Myers style,
Yeah.
the original Halloween, like next to a tree, going into somebody's house. And I mean, we have seen that done from that
He
style.
actually
Actually,
gets
that
into a red car, not just plays with one.
Yeah. And speaking of Michael Myers, Jeremy, I thought you were going to say your favorite shot of the movie was just him hanging out, creeping in the background, and you get like a nice little blue
Love that.
light cast on his face.
Yeah.
I've been begging for that forever. Like, just give me that. And it did it a couple times.
that's
with
the
him on
Halloween
beautiful.
fan in you. Yeah.
Oh,
no,
dude.
Yeah.
that
Put
was
a little
great.
blue light on his face.
I mean, I loved the
Yep.
campfire scene where,
Yep.
they're talking. Though I will say this much, I swear to God, and I don't know if he did this on purpose, but if I were drunk at that fire and that I was spinning that much, didn't seem that drunk. I was like, dude, I would throw the fuck up if I was hammered and watched that scene, because the camera spins around them for at least 4 minutes while they're telling that story about, Johnny or whatever. I was like, God damn it, I'm starting to get fucking dizzy over here.
I think most of them were high. I think Troy was the only one who was drunk.
Oh yeah, they were drinking like beers and stuff. It wasn't like they were,
Well, he had like a bottle of Smirnoff strawberry when you see through the window. I was like, dude, what is this guy doing?
Shit's gross. Ugh, I want to throw up thinking about it. But I'm just saying, I loved there were a couple moments there in that scene where you could feel his presence. And I love movies in this genre where you don't have to necessarily see them, even though they're there, you feel their presence. And that's how effective that is. And that's how those moments were just perfection to me. So what was your question, Phil?
I was going to see how you guys felt about, I've seen a lot of people bitch about this. I strongly disagree. A lot of people said, oh, there was no music in the movie. I'm like,
loved it without the music.
Yeah, you don't need music. Like the sound, it amplifies the sound of those vertebrae snapping. Like the juxtaposition of chirping birds on a bright sunny day with that happening. It's like, yeah, you don't need music.
No, I mean, again, we've had, if we're going to say what Brady's saying, that this is just a straight ripoff of Friday the 13th and all those movies. No offense, buddy, just saying. If we're going to say that, then why would we want, high strings?
Yeah,
I loved, it was beautiful. That's what when I mentioned earlier, there was this touching moment in this movie where I'm like, oh my God, I'm enjoying seeing him brutally slaughter this girl, this yoga kill. And I'm like, you just hear her bones breaking and her shrieks and her,
I would say the score is legitimately the sound of nature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the score. That I mean, those
the score to
the
life,
footsteps,
man.
The footsteps of him walking, and the birds, and
I found the sound effects too. All of them were even more effective. When he goes up to the ranger station, he breaks the glass. How much more effective is that? Honestly, and I thought back to this today, guys. Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. There's no score in that movie either. So this isn't the first time that a terror-inducing film decided to have no score. And I think, especially if you're going to go from this perspective of the killer, he wouldn't be hearing any music except for if he's going to walk towards a house and there's a radio playing or the TV playing or whatever. I loved it. And it still adds sounds and atmosphere to the movie. You know what I mean? Wherever he goes, there's atmosphere. You don't need music.
Yeah. And one of my favorite death scenes of all time is in Zodiac. The attack at Lake
one
Berryessa.
of my favorite movies, man. Oh my God.
That scene where he ties up the couple and stabs them to death. It's so effective
it's
because
silent,
there's no music. You just hear the waves from the lake. You hear birds chirping. And David Fincher is notoriously meticulous about his movies. And I guarantee you, he was like, well, let's try it with a score. But he was like, you know what? This is way creepier with just birds chirping on a beautiful day.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of my favorite scenes from any one of his movies. That's my favorite David Fincher movie. And I think it's very clear there, that decision, it makes it much more scary because you're seeing it real time, real life. That was the whole idea here. So I think it made the most sense to not have a theatrical score to the film.
Yeah.
So here we are. You guys ready for final thoughts?
Yes, sir.
All right. So final thoughts. And are you going to trash it or treasure it? First to our guest, Phil from the Spookhouse podcast. who was chomping at the fucking bit all week to talk about this with us, even though he's already talked about it.
Hey, I got to talk about it on my podcast with Doug. He just saw it last night.
Oh,
so
there
I'm going to go back in. I can't wait.
Dude, this is one I think that could be talked about for years on end. There's so much to dissect here for sure. So what are your final thoughts? Are you going to trash it or treasure it?
Oh, you already know. I fucking treasure this movie. I literally talked to my tattoo artist yesterday about doing a fucking giant rib piece of Johnny with a hook. Like
the poster?
I'm going all
that rules.
But yeah, I love the movie. I've never seen anything like it. It put me in a headspace after I saw it that I didn't even know was could be a thing. I was like somehow completely zened and relaxed, but sort of uneasy and scared at the same time. I don't know. I just fucking loved it. Not a 100% perfect movie. Very few movies are. Some things could have been taken down a minute or two, but overall, loved it. Sorry for rambling.
You're not rambling at all. Not on this show. Be ready.
This one was tough because, I mean, clearly I have a lot of issues with it. But I don't know that the issues that I have with the movie personally take it away from being a movie that I could treasure. So after some thoughtful introspection, since I saw it last night at this time, I would still treasure it because I do think that it's important to see a different take, a POV experimenting with a movie. And even though I do have some issues with how much is taken from other films, it is nice in a way to see a type of Friday the 13th movie back on screens, right? And it is nice to see that killer's perspective and to take away that the score, which, to answer your question too, Phil, a little bit, I would say that the lack of music in this is just as important to Johnny and his character as Carpenter is to The Shape in Halloween. Like all that goes into a character, right? So then the lack of the score, lack of the music also goes into Johnny and what makes him so effective in these kills even better. I am excited to see hopefully a Suburbia in a Violent Nature. So yeah, I'll treasure it.
J-Dog, little ghost J.
You already know, dog. I'm gonna treasure this thing. Jangalang, jangalang. Yeah, no, man. I really, really loved this movie. And I'm not even the biggest Friday the 13th fan. You guys know that. It's like one of my least favorite
Madman,
franchises.
though. You love The Burning. You
I fucking I do for sure. But I really, really loved this one. I was concerned maybe within the first 10-15 minutes of the movie that I was going to grow tired of the format and it just wasn't going to work for me, but it wasn't. I was super into it, and I think the minute detail of his very simple and quickly told backstory and the locket, like, invested, it made me be invested in this character and like, yeah, fuck those people. Go get your shit back, man. Fuck those people. So yeah, I'm gonna treasure it, man. It really worked for me, and I found it to be familiar, but also like brand new in a way that I could really, really appreciate it, and I loved it. So treasure all the way, baby.
I love how you just put it there, Jeremy, because I couldn't agree more that it felt familiar. It felt like something that we've experienced before, but fresh, and that's something that we need right now. And we haven't seen a movie like this in a very, very long time where, like I said a million times earlier in the review, stripped down, bare bones, just basic nitty gritty fucking brutality, but something you can relate to and that you're going to enjoy. So 100%, I did not allow the ending that did not work for me to ruin this experience. It's going to be a treasure for me as well. This is a movie that desperately needs to be seen on the big screen. I'm hoping that this will be another Terrifier 2 or one of those situations where, the box office continues to grow and more people are able to see it, and that theaters give it an extra week or two, because this movie is one that you should see. Again, it's June 3rd as of this recording. Summer season is upon us. There's nothing better than seeing a camp slasher. That for me is always what kicks me into high gear for the summer season. And, you know, much like Phil said, when he saw it on an afternoon, a sunny Sunday or whatever it was. For me, it was a rainy Saturday night in May. And that felt like, you know, the opening to summer slasher season for me. And this movie it feels perfect for the time that it's being released. More movies deserve to get released like this. And I think this needs to be talked about more and more. In a Violent Nature, 100% going on my shelf. Can't wait for a physical release. Go see it in theaters. And ladies and gentlemen, there it is for our review, the Fresh Fright Epic Film Guys episode on In a Violent Nature. Phil, thanks again for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
Those of our listeners have not heard you on the show before, tell them about Spookhouse Podcast, where they can find you and what it's all about.
So in a couple of weeks, we will be celebrating our 5-year anniversary of the podcast.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, it's where me and Doug just talk about horror movies, have a lot of laughs, talk a lot of shit, but hopefully offer some interesting discussion into the inside of the movie. We're not breaking the mold, but we have a lot of fun doing it. You can find us on YouTube. Has kind of been my main objective this year. I still doing the podcast format, of course, but starting to do a lot more YouTube exclusive content. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Find us on Instagram, Apple, Spotify. Yeah, that's it. Spookhouse Podcast.
There it is. Yeah. And thanks again for coming on, brother. Always a joy, man. Always a fun time, always a great conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, this is your first time listening to the Epic Film Guys. Thank you for checking us out. And if you've been continuously listening, once again, we're celebrating 10 years of Epic Film Guys as of last month. So thanks for sticking with us. We're forever grateful for your listenership and for you just following us and continuing on this journey with us. So you can check us out on every podcatcher wherever we're known to man when it comes to podcasts, and at Epic Film Guys on every social media platform. But as always, I'm Justin. Oh, yeah.
I'm Jeremy.
I'm BluBrry.
And we like to ask you to keep it
Hurry up and say it before I start coughing. I was like, get it out, man. I gotta cough.
Keep it creepy, you mother bastards.
Yeah, keep it creepy. And drink your tea.